The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast. This is a show that helps you become an even more awesome driving instructor and run a better driving school. As always, I am your jolly northern host, Terry Cook, and I'm delighted to be here, but even more delighted that you have chosen to listen, because we are back with a very special bonus episode for you, as I am joined by Deucalion McGregor of Go Green. And today, we're taking a deep dive into the topic of failure. We're looking at why we fail, what we fail at, how we can get over failure, how we can help the students get over failure. And it's a cracking episode. It's also one of the episodes that was initially exclusive to the Instructor Podcast Premium membership, because this series, what we call the F word, is an ongoing series over there designed to help us combat failure, because as driving instructors, we deal with it a lot, with the standards check, the part 3, the part 2, the part 1, the driving test, mock test, you name it. We have to deal with it with regards to failure. And this has fast proved to be a very popular episode, and I very much enjoyed this one, so I wanted to share it with you. But I also wanted to share with you a very special treat, because just for you, dear listener, throughout March, I am offering a 60% discount on an Instructor Podcast Premium membership. That's right, 60%. All you need to do is, when you sign up, enter the code MARCH60. So all together, no spaces, MARCH60 when you sign up. And the best way to do that is either go to the show notes and you'll find a link, or go to the website www.theinstructorpodcast.com. And over there, you should see a big red button that says Join the Instructor Podcast Premium. And then use that code MARCH60 to get a 60% discount off your first month. And not only will you then get access to all the other F-word episodes we've done, but you'll also get access to the over 200 hours worth of exclusive content to help you become a better driving instructor and, of course, run a better driving school business. So what I'd like you to do, unless you're driving, is hit pause and go and sign up. So I'd like you to do that now, please. And I'm presuming you've done that because you've come back and you're still listening. So thank you for joining me with the Instructor Podcast Premium. You will love it, as almost everyone does that joins up. But for now, let's get stuck into the show. So welcome to the F Word, the show where we discuss all things failure. And today I am joined by the delightful Deucalion McGregor-Sims. How are we doing, Deucalion?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am not bad at all. How well did I manage your name then?
It's fun. And to be fair, even if it were not good, I promise that whatever you come up with, I've heard worse. So it's okay.
But I didn't fail at it, so there you go.
Exactly. But it would have been okay if you had.
There we go. Right, show's over because we've covered it. No, but that's what we're talking today, though. We're talking failure. We're talking about the F word that no one likes. But I think it's really relevant to our industry because we're people, so we fail. Also, you've got learners that fail. We fail at standards checks and part 3s and all other aspects of life. But we are looking at 3 key questions today and talking around those. So let's start with the first one, and that's the definition of failure. Because I think everyone's got a slightly different definition. So I'll be interested. What's your definition of failure?
So when we spoke the other day about me coming on and sharing this conversation with you, and I'm very grateful you did, by the way. I deliberately didn't try to think about an answer to this question because I didn't want to give you anything that sounded a bit of well, that sounds nice. But I did kind of think about, well, what is my definition of failure? And I would say that I have a healthy relationship with failure. And so something that I say to my pupils, something I say to PDIs, something I say in my personal life to my friends or family is that failure isn't about getting something wrong. It's about refusing to learn from it. And I'm not, although that wraps quite nicely into our industry, I don't say that because this is a driving instructor podcast or that some of your audience will be driving instructors. That's genuinely my feeling about it. So failure isn't about getting something wrong. It's about refusing to learn from it. So I think true failure is when you let a setback define you instead of using it to refine you. That's the right way to put it. We're all going to miss opportunities. We're all going to experience tough moments, but I believe that we should lean into it and learn from it the same way that we tell our pupils. And I think a lot of instructors will say that we've all had those pupils who stall the car and freak out and I'm never going to do this again. And it's okay. It's an opportunity. I feel very strongly about that. So failure, in a word, is an opportunity. The problem that I think a lot of people have is that they don't always truly understand that. And if they kind of understand it theoretically, they don't always embody it as much as we want to, because it's hard, isn't it? Like when something doesn't go the way you want it to go, we always want that perfect outcome. But the reality is it doesn't work like that. The reality is that without failure, you don't have a clear vision of what you need to look like. You don't have a vision of what better looks like. And how can you continue to move forward? So I hope that people who know me will advocate that I try and live that way. Failure is an opportunity. We learn from it. It's only a problem if you refuse to learn from it. How does that as an answer?
It's rare that I have someone that rephrases something that I say and makes me want to then change the way I say it, but you just have, because one of the things that I talk about quite a lot is pity pies. So when something goes wrong, I throw myself a pity pie. And depending on the scale of the thing that's gone wrong, it's then the size of the pity pie. So for example, when I failed my part 3, I sulked for a day. When my dog died, I sulked for 6 months. Like, it's how you learn from those things. And I think that pity party is refusing to learn.
Yeah.
And when that pity party stops, that's when you accept the learning. So I'm going to stick to that example of those 2 examples, because when I failed my part 3, I just sulked for a day. I wasn't happy. I was miserable. But I slept. And the next day I was like, okay, what now? And I got up and I reprogrammed, I reset. I looked at all the stuff I'm going to do to get better, because I then accepted that I was learning from this failure.
Yeah.
When my dog died, I didn't. Now, obviously, it's a different aspect of failure, but it took me about 6 months to go, it was worth it. The 6 years that I had with her that time was worth losing her. And for the 6 months pity party, I refused to learn that. And then 6 months after, I then learned and I accepted that learn and moved on. So how you phrase that as actually just, I think, is more an eloquent version of my pity party.
Sure. Well, I mean, do you know what though? I love your 2 case studies there, because first of all, I think, let me be really clear when I say that failure is an opportunity. We learn from it. It's an opportunity to kind of go forward. But that's not to say that you're not entitled to sulk. Like I say that to PDIs when I support PDIs, when I support pupils, for instance. If somebody has had an unsuccessful test on a part 2, for example, it's actually part of my advice. Listen, give yourself an allocated amount of time to sulk, to strop, to be miserable. You're allowed that. Okay, this has been stressful. You've put a lot of time into this. You've put a lot of work into this. You put a lot of potentially money into this. Don't deny yourself the entitlement to sulk. We need that. It's healthy. The problem comes when the sulk never ends, or when the sulk becomes disproportionate and it ceases further progression. Your case study about failing your part 3, perfectly reasonable. Your case study about your dog, something that is very close to my heart, is the topic of grief. Because first of all, I'm really sorry that happened with your dog. I really am. That really cuts me up. I went through a bit of a A journey is not the word I want to say, but I'm going to say journey with grief from a young age. And I was experiencing grief from a very young age into adulthood. And I really struggled with kind of bringing that sulk to an end. And I'm going to, in this case, the sulk is grieving. So it's not quite the same. You losing your dog is not on the same spectrum as failing your part 3. It's permanent. You'll never have that back. And you said something just then that was really interesting to me, which was, it was worth it. And that's so fascinating because, and we're talking about a grand scale of suffering now rather than just being unsuccessful on a part 3 test. But I really struggled with grief for a long time because I argued, I don't know if it is. And that's not my view now, but I would lose somebody close to me, some of the most dearest, most cherished people in my world. And for a long time, I would sit and think, I have to carry this turmoil for the rest of my life. And let's just assume that the likely probability is that I'll live to a normal age. So let's say that maybe if I'm lucky, I'll have another 50 years. And I have to carry that for 50 years. And if that relationship was one that lasted 10 years, it seemed like a really unbalanced mathematical equation. And I went through for probably about a year. I really toiled with that question. Is it worth it? I don't know that it is. I'm not sure it is worth it because for the rest of my days, I will suffer. And then one step further was, okay, so when does that stop? When does that stop being accurate? So if I'm 70 and I lose the love of my life and we've been married our whole lives, and does that make it okay? Because maybe I'll grieve for less time than I enjoyed their presence and their relationship and their love. And then I thought, well, no, I don't know that makes it better because the longer it goes on, the harder it's going to be when it ends. And so then it's like, oh gosh, like at what point does it shift from it is worth it? So I was struggling because I was really presented with this really awful question, like, is it worth it? I'm not sure. And if you and I are cherished individuals to one another, I'm gonna lose you, or I'm gonna go first, and you're gonna lose me. And the only thing that I think is worse than me losing someone that I care deeply about is the idea that I go and I leave them in despair. So I really had this awful time with trying to figure out exactly what you just said about your dog, which was it was worth it, because it was like, I don't know. Is it if I lost my twin sister at 27 years old. From the point of existence, she was my twin. She was biologically connected to me. I cherished her more than I love myself. I've never loved somebody more than I love myself. And I lost her very suddenly in very awful circumstances. And for a long time, it was like, I don't know if that was a good trade, because I will spend, if I spend the rest of my life living an extra 50 years, maybe I will carry that. And as I said, it's mathematically, it was I don't know that it was a good trade. And then I asked myself things like, well, what if, at what point does that change? At what point? So if we were 75 and I lost her, would that have been better mathematically? And I'm not sure it would have been, because then the longer I've had her, the harsher the loss is. So I went through this for a long time, and I eventually was able to kind of zoom out. I was eventually able to kind of, okay, so I keep saying to myself, this is, in 100 years, none of this is going to matter. My cherished relationship with you, for instance, will not matter. Everything that's important to me now will not matter. What's the point? We'll all be dead. Why are we doing this? And this is this is connected to failure. Everything I care about now, why do I care? Everything that I'm failing or accomplishing, why do I care? And then I realized the problem is that I'm looking at a timeline that brings no purpose and meaning into my life. And I had to change the timeline. And I had to look at a timeline that brings purpose and meaning into my life. And so to loop full circle back to where we started, I had to pick a timeline that brought relevance and purpose into my life such that success and failure were relevant and necessary. And so in my case, if I have my dog, for example, I need to take care of this dog today. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm thinking about right now. This dog needs my love. This dog needs to be fed. I have a responsibility to this dog. I need to get up. I have to take care of my family. And so right now, for the next 24 hours, I have purpose and meaning. And I would loop full circle into what you said about your dog. And I can honestly say that I have, having been through my own version of what you described, concluded that it is worth it because grief is the price we pay for love. And the greater the grief, the greater the love. And so I'm so happy. I guess my point is, Terry, I'm so pleased. I'm really gutted that happened and that you went through that. But I'm so relieved that you are able to think about it that way and to come back to failure. Not that I think losing your dog was failure, but it puts us in a similar state of mind, I think. I'm so pleased that you seem to have that kind of relationship with failure or with misfortune. That what am I going to take from this? How am I going to be better from this? How can I learn from it? How can I lean into this? How can I make me a better person? And I want people to do the same thing with failure. So let me ask you a question. So, because you are actually a fascinating case study for this. Okay, so you are the driving instructor podcast man. Okay, so and why did you start the podcast? Because that's a bold move, putting yourself out there, inviting guests, steering conversation, having that responsibility, telling the world you're going to do it, and then worrying that maybe nobody's going to listen or nobody's going to want to come on and be a part of your show. A lot of people will never have taken that step. So you tell me why.
Well, just before I answer that, I will say I appreciate that sharing what you just shared there, because I think that's really powerful. And I think I agree with everything you've said. It's that idea of, was it worth it? Yes, because the more we enjoy spending time with someone, the more it's going to hurt afterwards. So there is an equilibrium there, I believe.
Yeah.
Now, people listening might have slightly different takes on that, and everyone, has the right to their own opinion, but it's how I view it. It sounds like we're in a similar way out there. But in terms of the question of sort of why I started the podcast and the fear behind that, so I can remember thinking to myself, who am I to release this instructor podcast? Because I qualified in 2018. I want to say qualified in 2018. And I started planning the podcast at the end of 2022. So there was only sort of 3 to 4 years there. And I'm thinking, everyone knows more than me. Why should I do this? But I mean, there's kind of obviously always more than one reason, but I still think the biggest reason why I did it was because what I wanted from the industry wasn't readily available. I wanted to easy access to stuff about coaching. I wanted stuff about mental health and mindset, about how to manage failure, not just about standards check stuff. And I felt like the industry was failing us at providing that. And it was there. There were some people doing it, but you really had to dig for it, and I couldn't find it. And so I thought, right, okay, the other thing I want it to be easy to find. So let's create this resource of a podcast where I can talk about this stuff and make it easy for people to find.
And so do you feel like you've built something real through that podcast?
100%. But, sticking to this, the failure motif, I have failed loads at this podcast. There are some episodes where I've not done very well. I did one episode where I stoned because I had too many painkillers and I didn't realize. Now, to be fair, no one picked it up, but when I listen back, I can notice. I'd sciatica and had way too many painkillers beforehand. I've done days where I forgot to schedule the episode. So rather than going out at 6 a.m., I've woke up like, oh crap, why didn't I downloads? And then I've had to adjust it. There's been episodes where people have no-showed. There's been episodes where I've got dates wrong. So much failure throughout, but I've consistently learned from that. And some of those failings, I go back to what I was saying before, they feel horrible, but they're always worth it I don't want
Yeah.
them. You give me the choice, I'd rather be successful every time because it feels nicer. But they're worth it. And I can even flip this back to my part 3 again. I'm so pleased now that I failed my part 3 first time because I'm in such a better position for this. And I think that the contrast to that is that I passed my standards check 6 months later, and it was the worst thing that could have happened to me because it gave me a false sense of security. I probably didn't deserve to pass. I just scraped it. I think the just being nice to me. And I didn't go and get further training straight away, which I'd planned to do anyway. But because I passed my standards check, I don't need further training now. And I kind of stepped back for about a year before coming into it. So I think that failure success, the failure often inspires us to do more. And the success can sometimes have the opposite effect. Would you agree?
I think I can't, you've put it, I can't put it any better. 99% of driving instructors will pass their part 3 and they will not pursue further training, even when they want to, even when they tell themselves they need to, even when they know that they still have area for improvement. Most of them within 12 months will not. How many will pursue further training after they've been unsuccessful? Most of them. So isn't that crazy to think? And so that kind of makes my point. And like failure is an opportunity. So I want to look back because I want to come back to what I was saying about your podcast is a brilliant example of failure. So it's a brave thing.
I need you to carry on there. Don't just say your podcast is a brilliant example of failure. You need to add context.
No, it's a brilliant example of your podcast is a brilliant example of your attitude to failure. So I asked you why you're doing it. You said, there was a need in the industry and that you felt like you could bring something to it that hadn't been there. And I asked you, do you feel like you've built something real in this podcast, in this industry? You said yes. And I would ask you, do you think it was meaningful? And I suspect you would say yes. And was it transformative? And I suspect you would say yes. And so that's the pathway, isn't it? So the pathway is building something meaningful through doing the hard things, putting yourself out there, even when you think you could fail, pushing through the discomfort and growing because of it. Most people never even start. And what was the hardest part for you was probably a collection of all of those things. And I think you're asking me about failure, my definition. I think you are a far more fascinating case study. If anyone has a question about what failure should mean to me, what my definition is of failure, what my attitude to failure should be, they need to look at what you're doing. Because who am I as a driving instructor who's only been going a few years and suddenly you've now become the driving instructor podcast man? And it never would have happened if you had a different relationship to failure. So what a wonderful example you are for that.
I appreciate that, but I'm still just chuckling over there. It's a prime example of failure. And that's going to be my tagline for the show. Your podcast is a prime example of failure. We're just taking a brief pause from the episode to tell you about something really special we've got going on over at the Instructor Podcast Premium. And that is expert sessions. Now, these are presentations that are delivered to you by some of the best around. We currently have 17 available for you to go and watch. And the last 3 are gamification with Tom Stenson, experimental learning with Phil Cowley and Diana Todd, and see it, say it, bin it with Lee Jowett. So as you can see, 3 of the industry's best right there. And we've got us next 2 lined up as well. But coming up on April the 23rd, we have Dr. Elizabeth Box joining us. And then on May the 5th, we've got Ollie Taylor joining us. So as you can see, there's a real good mixture of both topics and people that are coming to deliver these expert sessions. And these are available in the higher tier membership of the Instructor Podcast Premium. And the great thing about the expert sessions is that not only do you get to come along and watch them live, not only do you get to come along and interact with the guests and ask questions and share your thoughts on the things they're talking about, but they're all recorded. So you can go back and watch or listen to them. That's right, you can listen to them in the car while you're driving as well. You can go back and watch and listen whenever you want. And as I mentioned, there's 17 in there already. Now, if you sign up to that tier, it's what we call the interactive tier. You'll get all those expert sessions and everything else that is available in the Instructor Podcast Premium. But there is one other little bonus we offer. For an extra £2, you actually get the honest truth. That's right. I've teamed up with Ollie Taylor at The Honest Truth to get you the Honest Truth membership for effectively £2 a month, which isn't bad going at all. And as I said, included within that is everything within the Instructor Podcast Premium. So if you want to become the best instructor that you can be, go sign up. You'll find a link in the show notes, or you can head to theinstructorpodcast.com and click on the big red button that says join the Instructor Podcast Premium. But for now, let's get stuck back into the show. But no, I love that definition, and I love that conversation. And I appreciate those words as well, by the way. But I want to move on because I want to look at the second question we'll like to discuss, which is, I like to probe this a little bit. And well, it's quite simply this: what are you failing at right now?
I would say that I fail all the time. I'm failing at it constantly all the time. I'm always failing. To give you an example, my girlfriend dances. She's a dancer. I'm not a dancer. I don't have a musical bone in my body, but she likes dancing, and so we dance. We dance together. We've done classes. She's amazing at it. The teacher loves her. The teacher hates me. She's always in the advanced corner of the dance class, and I'm always in the useless corner of the dance class. But it's something that we could do together because one day maybe I'll be able to dance with her in a way that isn't shameful and embarrassing. But I fail at things every single day. I set myself goals every single day and I don't achieve them. I dance with my girlfriend and I can't dance and she can dance. I also don't know if you know this, but I fight as a hobby. So like the whole MMA thing. I've got friends who've been fighters for 20 years and they're amazing and I'm useless and I just get filled in every week. And so, but I know that it's not quite the answer you're looking for, but I'm constantly failing. I fail at putting my phone down early enough so that I can sleep properly. I fail at trying to start new skills. I fail at being a better person. I fail at being a better instructor. I fail at being a better boyfriend. I fail at being a better son all the time. There are things that I want to do all the time. But the difference with me is I'm okay with being crap at something. I'm okay at, not being good, because failure is the first rung on the ladder to success, isn't it? And that's exactly what I try and teach my learners. That's exactly what we teach. I'm sure you do. When something doesn't quite go right, it's don't worry. This is an opportunity. I've already said it. This is an opportunity. Why did that happen? What went wrong? What was going on in your mind when you made that decision or when you failed to make the decision? Do you understand it? How could we do it better if we did it again? If you could do it again and it could go the way you wanted it to go, what would that look like? And so many people, I think, are harsher on themselves for failure and more cruel because of the gaps in their perfection that they want. And I just, it's part of the process. The only difference between someone who becomes a brilliant driver, for example, and someone who doesn't is the way that they are willing to respond to being bad at something. So I really want Terry to give you some wonderful, beautiful answer to something that I'm failing at right now, but I do it all day, every day. I have no natural talents. I'm so useless at so many things, but I'm okay with that. And so, yeah, I feel like that's not a very good answer to your question.
I disagree. I think it's a really good answer because you've been honest and you spoke about the things that you're not good at or that you struggle with, that you find challenging, but also talking about how you're okay with that, because we're not going to be good at everything. There's loads of stuff that I'm crap at. And if we, again, go back, I like using learners as examples. So you think of that, we've all had them, the learners that beat themselves up when something goes wrong. And that question I often ask is, would you let someone else talk to you like that? The answer is always no. but they'll talk to themselves like that. And we talk to ourselves like that sometimes. So I was just really pleased to hear that you accept that. And I'm sure there's times you don't. I'm sure there's times you get frustrated or whatever, but overall we accept it. But I do want to dig into one in particular a little bit, because it is one that I'm struggling with right now. And that's the phone. So you mentioned like particularly when you were sleeping, but my one with a phone right now is dopamine. It's the
Yeah.
dopamine kick from a phone. It's I've got to check it every 2 minutes. And it's not like a conscious thing. It's that subconscious, I need my dopamine kick of getting a message or saying I've got a message or seeing if someone's tagged me on Facebook or whatever. And towards the end of last year, I did really well at getting out of that habit, that dopamine fix. This year, I'm worse than ever right now. That phone is giving me more grief than ever. So I thought it was interesting to pick at that one. Is there anything that you're feeling out right now that you're actively trying to improve upon?
Yeah. What, I mean, in relation to the phone or just separate?
Anything, just one thing that you're actively trying to improve upon right now.
Yeah, I'm really, really trying to improve on starting and ending the day properly. I guess some people might call that a morning routine and an evening routine or a nighttime routine, but whatever you want to call it. But I have a bit of a habit of being a million miles an hour. Like you, I'm constantly spinning many plates, and I have some sympathy for what that feels like. You've told me in the past some of the things that you're also juggling. And I know that there are a lot of people in this industry who will be listening to your podcast who are either ADIs or PDIs who are trying to juggle their journey in either a new journey in the industry, or a continued journey in the industry, trying to juggle things that I'm not even contending with: families, kids, marriages, relationships, eating right, waking up early, getting, but for me, I have this problem of being 100 miles an hour constantly. And it's like, I liken it to, I don't know if you train, but I train quite a lot. And one of the age old, expressions that you hear a lot is, you can be in the gym all you want, but if you don't have appropriate rest, that's where the growth happens. And so you need to stimulate growth with rest. And so, we need to stimulate growth with the right kind of rest. And so one thing that I'm really trying to do is, uh, put my phone down at night and stop working, and just stupid things like just trying to fall asleep in a healthy way. So what can I do differently that's going to help keep me sleeping rather than keep me awake? Well, I can sit and I can just breathe, and I can do some breathing exercises, and I can ensure that my diet is healthy, so that I'm not pumped full of all of the wrong kind of crap. And I'm conscious of the things that I consume visually, audibly, or orally, um, in the hours that lead up to my sleep. And I try and wake up, and I try not to look at my phone right away. And I try not to give myself any excuse. People talk about, oh, I can't leave my phone in the next room because it's my alarm clock. Go and buy an alarm clock. It's really simple. So I leave my phone in the next room. I make sure I don't look at it for at least 45 minutes before I wake up. I try and drink water. Oh my God, how difficult is that in our job? Because you constantly have to run and use a toilet. So that's inconvenient. And so I don't do it. And so I'm trying to have, especially in the mornings, I'm trying to be kinder to myself in the mornings. And that starts the night before, by the way. A morning routine starts the night before. And so I'm trying to be more generous and more kind to my routines so that the day can be better. And it's so hard, because how do you juggle it all? Like, I don't want to sound like somebody who is, doesn't really have any real problems. It's not lost on me that we're not living in a time where we're chucked in the middle of warfare and so on. But it's like, you gotta eat right, but you also need to make sure that you take care of your body physically. Otherwise you'll die young. And then you have to make sure that you have to eat the right foods, but then eating the right foods normally involves self-discipline, and it usually costs more to eat healthy. And then it usually takes more time to prepare that food that's more healthy. And then you should probably take some kind of supplements so that your body is getting the nutrients it deserves and the needs so that it can function. By the way, don't drink any caffeine after 12 midday because it's not good for your system, and don't look at your phone, but you also need to make sure that you have some kind of take care of, give yourself some time for yourself and do some yoga and get to the gym. And don't forget to be a good parent. And by the way, the dog has to be taken out, and don't forget that you owe your spouse some time. And how do we juggle all this? And this is before I've even got to work.
Feel like I've broken you.
Yeah. I know. But I'm interested on, how do you get on with that? How do you juggle all of these things that we're told to juggle?
It's the most important thing is the most important thing. You can only do one thing at once. So you could have that to-do list of 10 items. Only one of them can ever be the most important. So if I'm sat outside at someone's house waiting for a driving lesson, I might have to ring up and pay a bill. I might have to look after my kids. I might have to whatever. But at that moment, the only thing that actually matters is that student on that driving lesson. Everything else is irrelevant because I've got to deliver that driving lesson. Now, if just before that driving lesson, the school has run up and said, keep in mind, I've not got kids, this is an example, but the school rings up and says, kid's ill, take him to hospital, you need to come. All of a sudden, that driving lesson is no longer relevant. The only thing that matters is getting to look after my kid. So in the short term, or in the now, in the moment, the only thing that matters is the most important thing, which is the thing you're doing right now. Nothing, when we're recording this podcast, I'm not checking my phone. I'm not, nipping out to do anything else. It's like, this podcast is the only thing that matters. All my other screens are shut down. So day to day, that's how I get through it, because I don't give a crap about anything else apart from the thing that I'm focusing on. One of the other things that I found, and this is probably a me thing rather than a general thing, but I think there's a key in here somewhere, is if I've got driving lessons, because I still aim to do sort of 16 to 20 hours a week. So if I've got driving lessons, I don't do a to-do list before those driving lessons or the night before, because during the day, I'm going to be thinking about my to-do list rather than the important thing, which is my driving lessons. So I'll do the driving lessons, then I come home, then I do a to-do list. Because then I also know how I feel. Have I got the energy to do this? So I think, again, that's a Terry thing. So, but working out what works for you. Maybe you're someone that doing your to-do list the night before is then what helps you that day. But for me, it has a negative impact because then it impacts negatively my driving lessons because then I'm not thinking about the most important thing. So I would say that is where you start if you're struggling there. In the moment, the only thing that matters is the moment. Outside of the moment, when you're planning, that's where you get good at scheduling.
Sure. I think that's really good advice. It's funny because I'm constantly trying to think of 19 different things. And so for me, it's quite good to make the list so that I can kind of let it go from my mind because it's there, it's written down there. I'm not going to forget that. I can forget about it now and I can come back to it because I know it's written down. So that actually really helps me let go of it. If I don't write it down, then my brain for the whole way through that 2-hour lesson is going to be thinking, don't forget to do that thing, don't forget that thing. And then I'm not in the moment. So it's richly ironic because the total opposite works for me. But the point that you're making is find what works for you. And that's great advice.
There's a brilliant book by a chap called Simon Hartley, been on the podcast, obviously. It's called Two Lamps in the Pool. And he's talking about how he was working with an Olympic swimmer. Now, Simon Hartley isn't a swimming coach, just to clarify. But this Olympic swimmer was struggling to focus on his swimming. And Simon being Simon says, well, what problems have you got? All you've got to do is swim 2 lengths at pool. And at first, this swimmer fell out of him. He's like, no, there's so much more. There's training. There's this, listen all the things. And Simon's like, yeah, but when you're in the pool, what are you doing? You're swimming 2 lengths. And that's when he had that realization that, when I'm in the pool, the gym is irrelevant. The food is irrelevant. The sleep is irrelevant because I'm in the pool. But then when I'm going to bed, the pool is irrelevant because I'm going to bed. And it's that categorization. And I will just chuck one other thing, actually, before we move on, is the to-do list. So I do a brain dump. I regularly do brain dumps. I've got a list on my phone. It's everything that I need to do goes on this brain dump. That doesn't get moved into my to-do list until I do the to-do list. So I get what you're saying, because I forget stuff like a morpho. So it needs just tracking in that to-do list, and then it gets moved over when I create it. The downside is that when I have a day with no lessons, that to-do list is really long. So, but let's move on, because I want to move on to the third question, one that's a bit more positive. What's an example of where failure has led to success?
I would say, to continue the trend of not truly answering your question the way that maybe I could, I would say that like every single thing I've ever been successful at started with failure. So, and I don't say that to be coy, and I don't say that to be evasive. I really mean that. I mean that very literally. I'm not naturally good at anything, truly. I don't say that for your sympathy, although I'll take it. But I wasn't a very normal child. I wasn't. I was confused. I did not do well with the natural education system. I was homeschooled for a long time. I say homeschooled with quotations because that was just my parents keeping me at home and not educating me. I had no sense of like what norm was. I grew up in the slums of kind of various places. We grew up in abandoned buildings. I didn't understand normal things so I didn't know what birthdays was. I don't know, that sounds like a crazy thing, but just to put that into context, this is how weird and feral I was as a child, and how weird and feral my childhood was. I was like 8 or 9 when I first found out what a birthday was. And so I didn't understand social norms. And so that sounds like what the hell's that got to do with the question? Well, I'll explain. When you are at a level where you don't even comprehend fundamental basic social norms, like what a birthday is, you are so disconnected from the world that every single day you are kind of not in the real world with people. And so when eventually my parents gave up and decided to send me to school, I was a weird child. I wasn't normal. I didn't understand social norms. I didn't know how to behave. I had no natural talents. I had no hobbies because we were living in an abandoned building. So where the hell am I going to start a hobby like trampolining? And I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I was just a weird kid. And so I really mean it when I say this, Terry. I started learning very late. And I was about 10 when I first started learning the kind of things that kids learn when they're very small. I was learning social norms. I was learning to, I remember I would say things to people as a child, and I would always I would get curious responses. And I used to think, well, I don't understand why this is a weird response, because I didn't have those norms. So from a young age, I was playing catch up, and I had no conventional influences. I didn't really have guidance. I certainly didn't have financial support. And so I didn't have a head start in anything. I wasn't good at anything. Anything I liked, I was terrible at. So I was genuinely, sincerely bad at everything. And yet, here's the thing. Anything I'm good at today started with true, genuine, utter, and complete incompetence and regular failure. But maybe because I was such a weird kid, that didn't bother me. I knew that I was terrible at everything. I couldn't read and write, as I said. I couldn't fit in with social norms. And I would do and behave in really weird ways. But because of that, I didn't have, we talk about social norms. We have this social norm attitude towards failure. And I didn't have that. In a way, that was kind of a blessing, because I just didn't comprehend how the average brain worked. And so when things were not good, it didn't matter, because I just enjoyed doing it. And so I was never thinking about where I'm going to be, what I want to do. Clearly now I'm not quite the feral child I used to be. And so I have a bit more long sight in what I do. But my point is this: I wasn't focused on where I was. I wasn't focused on where I wanted to be. I I I was just focused on, this is what I want to do. And the beauty is that even now today, as a driving instructor, I never had visions of being a driving instructor. I wish, Terry, that I could tell you that I was 7 years old and I knew that my destiny was to change the industry and revolutionize how people thought about driving instructors, because we do have certain stereotypes in this industry. That's not it. I just found something that I wanted to do, or found something that I didn't want to do and did something else. And I was unsuccessful at a lot of it. I didn't conform with the way I was trained as a driving instructor. I didn't think it was a very good way of doing it. Whether I was right or wrong is not the point. And so I was everything. Like now I consider it a success just that I'm here now and I'm able to talk to genuinely inspiring people like yourself, and you do inspire me. And you asking me to come here and talk to you is what a wonderful privilege that is. And so my point is that the failure is just the first rung on the ladder to success, as I said. And Terry, I'd never insult you by telling you what to think, but I do hope that anyone listening to this, and maybe even yourself, I do want to help people understand how to think, because the answers and the breakthroughs, the success, all of that is that's going to come from you. But my job when I think about how I can help people is how to help them think differently about their own relationship with failure. So failure isn't something to avoid. It's something to embrace. It's normal. It's necessary. It's the doorway to growth. And as soon as you can shift your mindset from I'm failing to I'm learning, then everything changes. And so I was failing constantly, quite literally in ways that the average person probably didn't fail. And here I am, somebody that can string a sentence together and read and write and teach people to drive. And I'm responsible for training driving instructors all around the UK. And I genuinely believe that I'm helping people because of the failures that I have. And so, I don't think that I've answered your question, but I'm every single thing I've ever done that has failed has led me to where I am today. And so I've failed at a lot of things tragically in terrible ways, and it is okay. It works out in the end, I promise.
I think you have answered the question. And you finish with my favorite phrase, kind of, which is, if it's not all, what is it they say? It'll be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, then it's not the end. But
right.
I think one thing I do just want to touch back on that you said there, that I think in particular I want to dig into a little bit, is that you didn't know what you wanted to do. So you kept finding things that you didn't like doing, and then you'd go on and find something else. And I think that's massively underrated, because it's like when I have that rare elusive day off where I've nothing scheduled in, I always get stressed over what I want to do that day. And I have to start by going, what I want to do. And then I'll rule all the things out. And then often you're just left with, right, okay, cinema. Excellent. That sounds great. Why didn't I just think of that in the first place? But
yeah,
do you think that people, I don't want to use people too generally, but do you think that is where some people struggle, that idea of looking for what they want rather than what they don't want sometimes, which can work both ways?
Yeah, like definitely. And that's true both ways. I literally tell my pupils and the PDIs that I support, what a privilege it is to be here failing miserably, because failures give you something priceless, a clear vision of what you need to do better. You are, again, another example of that. I, like you, didn't necessarily think that I was going to be where I am when I was 20 years old. I found something, or I was trying to avoid things that I hated doing. And so I kept trying things until I found something that not just I didn't hate, but I really quite loved. And I really quite love what I do. And I know you do too. And I know that you feel very magically passionately about this industry. And if there were more people like you, Terry, this industry would look totally different. And frankly, it needs to be totally different. So lean into it. Just like, it's okay. I'm telling you now, anyone who is listening to this, I'm telling you now, every single thing you are failing at right now, every single thing you have failed at in the past, whether you remember them or not, that will lead you to a whole bunch of stuff that you can't fathom right now. That will take you to places that you never envisaged in your wildest dreams. So all I want you to do is just accept, oh, that didn't go how I perhaps would have liked it to a moment ago. But I know that one day down the line, and I don't know when, I don't know how, I'm going to be better for it. And I was 21 years old when I became a driving instructor. I became a driving instructor because I hated my last box. And now here we are talking to people that I possibly will never meet on your wonderful podcast, training driving instructors all around the UK and trying to change the industry in genuinely and sincerely a positive way, trying to combat stereotypes. And that all came because I just hated my boss and I wanted to do something different. So I just threw myself into it and I thought, that'll work out.
You want to, is there anything else you want to touch on today?
Well, I guess I'd like to know your definition of failure.
So I think it's similar, maybe just a different wording. So I kind of have cheaply two definitions. But the definition of the technicality of failure for me is when something doesn't go according to plan. So if I go back to my two examples before, when I failed my part 3 first time, well, that didn't go according to plan. When my dog died, that didn't go according to plan. She was going to live forever. That's what was going to happen. Obviously, that was my plan. So things don't go, the way I look at failure is something not going according to plan. But then the second definition is it is an opportunity to learn and develop. It is an opportunity to change direction and evolve. So they're kind of the two separate definitions I use.
I like that.
Do you want to take a moment to tell people where they can find you and what they have to offer?
To be honest with you, Terry, I'm not always the most easy person to find. I'd be a terrible criminal because you could just chuck my name into any search, any search method and you'll find me. But I train driving instructors with Go Green. I support driving instructors on Lou's PDI group, which is, as you know, was the PDI group that was set up by my hero, my mentor, which was Lou Walsh. And I was very privileged that she asked me to come and be a member of the team before she passed away suddenly and awfully a couple of years ago, well, a year and a half ago now. And so the PDI group is a brilliant space for anybody who just wants to be in a supportive area with no bias. We deliberately try not to, we're not here to give our opinions on anything or anyone in the industry. We're just there to give people the information they need to go forwards in an area that is hopefully kind and non-judgmental. And that is, as you'll know, probably better than me, something it's shamefully difficult to find in this industry is online platforms that are safe spaces, that are non-judgmental. And so we try and control that and create that environment. So if you are a PDI and you're looking for support, you can find me in that group, Lou's PDI group. If you're looking for support, you can find me on Go Green Driving Instructor Training. You can just literally put my name into Google and you'll find me. I'm based in Portsmouth on the south coast. So if you're around, come and say hello to me. I want to know your journey. I want to know how I can help. Or even if you just want to chat, I'm a fairly open book.
I will include links to Go Green and Lou's PDI group in the show notes for everyone. But I'll take a moment to thank you for joining us today, Deucalion. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Terry. You're awesome.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.